Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Classical Academy Podcast, your friendly guide to the world of classical Christian education. I'm your host, Dr. Mark Phillips. And listen, before we get started, if you are enjoying our podcast, please subscribe and give us a review. And share the podcast with friends, with family, anyone who might want to learn more about classical Christian education. Jesus tells us in Matthew 22 that loving thy neighbor as thyself is equivalent to loving God with all we are. His half-brother tells us in James 2 that social hierarchy, favoritism, prejudice, if you will, is a sin. Proverbs 16:18 instructs us that pride goes before destruction, a haughty spirit before a fall. Either the pride must be destroyed and the haughty spirit must fall, or the prideful, haughty person could well come to ruin, or even miss a life with the true love that God intended for them. What might a journey from pride and prejudice to humility and love look like? How would this journey affect those around someone making such a pilgrimage? Can first impressions change? And can the impressed and the impressor change? Does Jane Austen give us a glimpse into these considerations relevant to any generation? They're always meaningful, things to ponder, always for such a time as this. My guest today who will help us answer these questions is Jandy Hardesty, as we discuss Jane Austen's magnificent novel, Pride and Prejudice. Jandy Hardesty is now in her 5th year of teaching literature for our juniors and seniors at Trinity. And as we have shared before, she is quite the movie aficionado. She knows more facts about movies, best pictures, best actors and actresses than anyone I've ever met or even heard of. So the first question I'm going to ask her, what was the best year for movies?
Well, Mark, I'm going to go with a classic answer and a classic year, which is 1939.
Ah, and why is that?
We just had a preponderance of great movies come out that year. Mm-hmm. I mean, when you have The Wizard of Oz, you have Gone with the Wind, you have a version of Wuthering Heights that still holds up. There's a lot of others. Mm-hmm. You have color really coming into its own and being used well for the first time in 1939. And it just feels like a watershed year.
I wanted to ask you, first of all, Pride and Prejudice, most people are familiar with it. So I want to ask you right up front, before we get into the novel itself, why do we study it here in a classical Christian school?
I'm going to say first, we should read and study Pride and Prejudice because it's immensely enjoyable. Jane Austen is one of the most witty and delightful writers in the English tradition, creating memorable and hilarious characters.
Yes.
That she pokes fun at them in a gentle satire, but she also makes you really love them. Secondly, it's because she puts those characters in situations that test their discernment and moral fortitude in ways that our own discernment and moral fortitude is still tested today, 200 years later.
Sure, absolutely. Do you have a favorite or most interesting or most intriguing character from Pride and Prejudice? They're all great.
Yeah. Well, I have to say that we actually just read the scene where Elizabeth meets Lady Catherine de Bourgh for the first time today in class. But that is just such a delightful scene. And even though Lady Catherine de Bourgh, you kind of love to hate her, she is so much fun to read and to watch on the screen in the adapted versions.
Yeah, very good. So who was Jane Austen? Let's hear about the author first.
Jane Austen was one of the most innovative and experimental novelists of her time. That may be surprising to hear because she's considered kind of a safe person right now. You're like a safe author, classic author. She wasn't the first novelist, nor was she the first female novelist, but in a time when novels were new, the word novel means new, they were considered trashy and corrupting at the time. She said no. The novel can be a real literary art form about real people facing real moral battles. And then she proceeded to make it so. She developed narrative techniques that allow her to subtly shift in and out of different character viewpoints to show the characters' inner lives, while also maintaining an omniscient narrative voice that can pass judgment as needed on these characters, who sometimes frequently need judgment.
Yes, I love omniscient narrative. That's good. That's great. hence almost godlike, certainly with the ability to judge the characters. What's the context that we need to know when we're talking about Pride and Prejudice?
Well, I think it's clear from Jane Austen's continued popularity that her characters and stories are pretty immediately relatable, even to a modern audience or modern readers. She's never really gone out of style in the past 200 plus years now that she's been around. That said, there are real differences between the England of her time and the America of our time.
Sure.
So one thing that I find is really helpful for students to know is something about the class hierarchy system. It's not truly necessary, but it does help a lot to understand various character interactions and why they are the way that they are, why certain characters get angry at things and others don't. That helps a lot. So we talk a lot about that. The society of Austen's time also placed a lot of importance in etiquette and specific rules of how people should behave in certain situations and in certain relationships. And I find it really helpful to let students think about what rules of etiquette we have today that we get upset about when they get broken. And they can really see then that this is a universal thing, that we have rules that we care about. And just because Austen's are different than ours, the principles behind them are the same.
Sure. Imagine a Jane Austen novel involving the LA traffic. She would do a great job with that. Anyway, so let's get into the novel itself. Give us an overview of Pride and Prejudice.
All right, here's your quick overview with very few spoilers.
Sure.
Elizabeth Bennet is one of 5 daughters. Her family is well off, but there is a problem. With no sons, the estate will pass to a distant male relative upon her father's death. Unless the girls can make good marriages, they'll have very little to live on. This clashes with Elizabeth's intelligence, independence, and desire for happiness in marriage. She is not one who's just going to marry for the money, and yet she kind of needs to marry for the money or she's not going to be able to survive.
Right.
So she judges people quickly, especially the upper crust Mr. Darcy, who has his own issues with pride.
Sure.
And so I would say their story is less of a romance than it really is a journey of character formation and discernment as they learn to become the people that they should be and also discern the truth about the people around them.
Now, the rightful heir to their property, tell us about him.
Yes, it's Mr. Bennet's cousin, Mr. Collins, will be the one who will inherit, and he is a pretty ridiculous character.
Yes.
He's a clergyman, and Austen's father was a clergyman. So she's taking the opportunity to poke a little bit of fun at the excesses of a class she knew well. And Collins comes and would marry Elizabeth if she would have him, but she knows very well that he will not make her happy and that she can't make him happy either.
And her mother wants her to for pragmatic reasons. Does the father come to the rescue, Mr. Bennet?
Yeah, he cares much more about Elizabeth's happiness than about their financial stability.
Yes.
Which some see as a virtue and some could also see as a potential vice.
Oh, it's not pragmatic. In other words, I see. So I was going to ask you, since he is clergy, so you think it's related to the fact that her father was a clergyman? It doesn't go any deeper. Was there some kind of animosity toward the church, or just excesses she saw through her father's employ?
Well, I think that she has other characters in other books that are clergymen that are quite upright and noble. So she takes the opportunity to point out the potential flaws and the ridiculous nature of some of people in every social class and job of her time. And she happens to hit the clergy a little bit hard in this book and also in Emma. I don't think she has any animosity towards her father or anything. It's just that she happened to know a lot of rectors probably and could point out their flaws.
Yes, and she was a very honest writer about her time. Now, would you say that Jane Austen would have had any kind of insight whatsoever as to the longevity of this novel? Do you think, and I know I'm asking you to go into her mind and her heart a little bit, but it's always fascinated me, something so superb as Pride and Prejudice. Did she have any idea that it would be relevant in a generation where it's so different from the setting, the time is different, the place is different, yet Americans relate to it as much as British, modern Americans, as much as that time. Do you think she had any insight whatsoever that it would have such longevity, such significance?
I don't know that she would have thought in that way. And I mean, I can't obviously jump into her
Sure,
head
it's tough.
and consider.
It's tough.
Novels were so new at the time that I think the idea of writing a novel that would stand the test of time probably would have boggled anyone's brains.
Took courage just to write one, I suppose. So let's get to the students now. So do they also see it more as this pilgrimage of character building, of character development, I should say, the virtuous character development? Do they see it like that initially, or are they going into this expecting a romance novel? Because that's how it's often portrayed.
Yeah, I think they all expect romance. And they frequently will interpret it in that sort of way, especially at the beginning. That's how it's marketed, as you were saying. And they'll frequently look at it as like, oh, it's an enemies to lovers story. You know, it's because there's all of these tropes, you know, that romance novels have. And they know those. And so they'll frequently be like, oh, well, this is this trope, or this is like this. And the first thing to say is, well, she's doing it first, though. If this is a romance novel, she's creating the genre to some degree. But I think it's really interesting that she always moves towards a wedding and a marriage, right? But we never see the weddings at the end of her books. It's almost like she stops short of that. She gets them to where they need to be, and then she's like, and I'm done.
Yes.
And I think that really is because she cares more about the moral formation that gets them to that point than she does about the wedding and the marriage itself.
She wants to focus elsewhere on what's happening because it is an enemies to lovers story, but that's simply a benefit of the character development of these two, of both of them. So when the students are having discussions, how do you see it affecting them? How does this form students studying Pride and Prejudice?
I think throughout the book, we're constantly asking questions that guide toward noticing the moral formation of these characters, that it's not just two people falling in love, but it's actually two people who have to do a lot on themselves before they can get to that point, and also learn discernment and formation as well. So we ask questions like, how do we become the person that we need to be? What does Elizabeth need to recognize about herself before she can even come to a right conclusion about Darcy or Wickham or any of the other characters? How do we discern who we should marry? I mean, I'm teaching this to 16 and 17-year-olds. It's not too early for them to start thinking about this.
Not at all.
And so you can see them start asking these questions, start thinking like, wait a minute, how would I decide who I want to marry? How do I know that I should marry this person and not that person? How do I become the kind of person that the person that I want to marry would want to marry? That's because that's really what we're going for here is Darcy at the beginning can't get Elizabeth to be interested in him because he's not the kind of person that she would want to marry.
Yes.
And so he doesn't understand that, and he has to go through character formation as well. It's not just, this is not just a book for the girls. It's a book for the guys too.
Absolutely.
And Elizabeth does the same. And so we're asking these questions all along. And I think one of the neatest things to see is when they begin to realize that things that happen in the book that may seem outdated or old-fashioned or, we don't follow etiquette like that anymore. No one cares how you're introduced to someone else at a party. But those are really universal issues of respect.
Yes.
And that if we don't follow the rules of respect that our society has laid out, it's the same outcome as for them.
Yes.
And so being able to take these older things and abstract them out a little bit and see the universals behind the particulars, that can be a challenge at the beginning, but usually by the middle of the book or so, they are getting really good at it.
Wonderful. What do you think are some of the, I'd be interested to hear some of the interesting comments and reflections of some students on some of the questions. Can you do any pop into your head that, oh, wow, that was insightful, or gee, that person really needs to think about this a lot more.
That one about the respect issue was actually a student bringing that up.
Oh, wow. Fantastic.
I was trying to make the distinction between, one of the questions that I ask is, what's the relationship between propriety, that is the rules that society lays down for how we should act, and morality, that is the rules that God lays down for how we should act. Mm-hmm. We always work through that, and students will usually come to an understanding of that propriety is actually important, but that it's under morality. So the way you decide whether to be proper at any particular moment is whether there's a higher morality that calls you out of it. Yes. And so students this year got that pretty quickly. And then I was trying to make the point that how you're introduced to someone at a party isn't really an issue of morality, is it? Yeah. I was trying to distinguish this. And the student was like, but it is, though, because underlying it is this issue of respect. And so I thought that was very insightful.
Very insightful, indeed. That's exciting to hear. So I'm a parent, I'm a grandparent, and my student has the great fortune of studying Pride and Prejudice with you. Parents, I hope you understand that. That is a remarkable gift that God has given them to sit under Jandy while they're studying Pride and Prejudice. What might be some probing questions that the parent or grandparent might ask?
So you could ask that one about propriety and morality, our rules of society. How does that fit with our current society? Or do our current rules of how we expect people to act, how do they fit with morality? We also have been thinking a lot lately about what is marriage for? What is it for? Why did we get married, and what leads to a good marriage? What makes a good marriage? What examples from the book can you think of marriages? Are the marriages in the book good or bad? In what ways?
There's certainly a bad one in there.
They can already point out a few, even though at this point we're about halfway through the book. How is character formed? How do we see Elizabeth, especially since we're more in her point of view? How do we see her making decisions? How do we see her failures of discernment? And how do we see her learning to correct those? And then how can we apply those things to our own learning how to discern properly?
That's fantastic. And I think if the parents and grandparents are asking these questions, they'll end up doing their own reflections on themselves as well. It's certainly a wonderful opportunity that the students have to read this fantastic, timeless piece of literature. And as you said, early on in the novel genre, one that's, even though it's early on, it's been very difficult to top it. We're very grateful, Jandy, that you are the one leading and guiding them in this. Anything else that you think people should know about what happens in the classroom, in the formation of students while they're studying Pride and Prejudice?
I would say I think it's maybe a little bit of a mistake to treat a book like this just as like a moral treatise. Like, here, let's look at all of the ways that Elizabeth fails or all the ways that Darcy fails and what we can learn from that. It's tempting to do that, but the book is so delightful, and really it expands our moral imagination, our ability to understand what it means to be human and how to flourish as a human being. And that's not just ticking off a bunch of boxes that the characters also tick off. Could I close with a quote from Peter Leithart?
Oh, I'd love it. Yes.
Okay, this is Peter Leithart wrote a wonderful little book called Miniatures and Morals about Austen's novels. And this is what he wrote in response to people who think that Austen's books there's nothing happening in them, and people are just going back and forth to people's houses and talking. He says, for Austen, the sensational or extraordinary do not provide a sound basis for moral education and experience. On the contrary, she recognizes that the greatest ethical challenges come in the midst of daily life, precisely when nothing is happening.
Wow.
I think that's what we really see in the book, is that, like, you don't need characters in the midst of war and a life and death situation. We have these questions come up every day of how am I going to react in this very ordinary situation, and that's what we see happening in Pride and Prejudice.
Fantastic. Oh my goodness. Wow. What a great note to end on. Jandy, thank you so much for joining us. And thank all of you for joining us on the Classical Academy podcast. It's presented by Trinity Classical Academy right here in Santa Clarita, California. And if you want to hear more about this unique education that fortunately is rapidly growing, the type of education offered at Trinity, give a listen to our school's other podcast called Different by Design, because indeed classical Christian education is different by design. The producer of this podcast is Shay Ramquist. Cameron Hubbard is our audio engineer. So until next time, as we all journey to what is hopefully a more Christ-like attitude of humility and love, let's all continue to grow in wisdom, in virtue, and in the love of God.